Hi guys, welcome to the podcast today of YarninBlak. Got a great friend of mine, Yaleela, coming on to join us. But before I do throw over to introduce her to you, I just would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that we're actually broadcasting from. We're down here in Melbourne, in Balwyn Q, on the land of the Wurundjeri people. I want to pay respect to their elders past, present and emerging. And I extend that to lands that you're all currently calling in from, and pay respect to all Aboriginal people that are joining us today, including my special guest, Yaleela, who is joining us for the first time. But hey, how are you going?
Hello, AJ. I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, I'm glad that you could join in. So tell our listeners a little bit about you. Who are you? Where you're from?
Yes, so I'm Yaleela. I am a Gooreng Gooreng Bundjalung woman. I am living on my traditional lands here in Gladstone, central Queensland. I'm on Gooreng Gooreng country. On our country as well, we share this community with three other local Aboriginal groups. So that's our Gooreng, Baili, and our Tribalang Bunda peoples here too.
Yeah. Now, Gladstone it does border on those four communities, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. Yep. And that was the impact of native title.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. So your background, your working background is a social worker?
Yeah. So I'm a social worker. I'm an accredited mental health social worker.
Okay.
And I have worked in early intervention. I've worked in domestic and family violence, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander health, emergency crisis relief. I've done a bit of work in it, a bit of work at the university as well here, CQU.
Cool. So I'm going to go back to when where did you grow up and where did you study? Primary school and high school first?
Well, as with many Aboriginal families, we were highly transient.
Yep.
So I was born on Bundjalung country in Lismore, New South Wales. Uh,
I went to school at Moolumbar.
oh, there you
You know
go.
the area.
A lot of my dad's family are in northern New South Wales, Casino, Tabulum.
Yeah.
So born in Lismore, and grew up between like Casino and Gladstone, because so mum's family's from Gladstone.
Yeah.
Did my schooling, and then I went and did a Bachelor of Arts.
Yeah.
I majored in anthropology and sociology. I was very interested in how society operated, and then realized I needed something else. And I wanted to I guess my pathway was to get into some kind of profession, right? So I had my daughter. She's now 8, but when she was 6 months old, I thought I'm going to go do my master's degree, and I chose Masters of Social Work through Southern Cross University.
Yeah. So what attracted you to social work?
Yeah, great question. I think growing up in the community that I did, and similarly with, our mob, understanding the impacts of the social determinants of health and how that impacts on our everyday functioning and health and well-being. And to live a good quality of life, we've got to be able to have all different of those domains, or I guess those parts of our health and well-being attended to.
Yeah.
Mm.
I was just going to ask you, because you had a little one at the time, how was study and motherhood both at the same time?
It was tough. It was tough, but I think I knew that um me being, thinking about the trajectory of her life and what that was going to look like was, drove me to get that piece of paper and do the study. The unpaid placement, AJ, I wasn't paid for my placement, those 1,000 hours and all that kind of stuff. So obviously there's been some changes recently through legislation, which is really good. But yeah, it was a hard slog. And then also being a mum, a first time mum as well.
What two? Because you did two placements.
Yeah,
What was
yeah.
what was your placement areas? Where did you do your placements?
So the first placement was actually at the Salvation Army here in Gladstone.
Oh, cool.
And it was kind of like they're the only people that wanted to take on placements at that time. Who wants to supervise and support a social work student for nothing?
Yeah.
So it was about the university having good relationships with, I guess, local community organizations that would be willing to take me on.
Yeah.
So I did, yeah, and they worked a lot with, emergency crisis relief, people that needed food vouchers that would ring the Salvation Army hotline and say, I'm really struggling this week and I just need that little bit of extra support. But they'd also put on, free barbecues and breakfasts for people that just were doing it a bit tough. And so it really, I guess it humbled me and it brought me back to life, like real life situations where I felt a bit privileged and being able to get a really, I guess, a strong understanding around, my social work, like this is core social work practice is being on the ground and with people. The My second placement was at a domestic and family violence organization. So we were supporting women and children that were escaping from or had escaped from domestic and family violence.
Yeah. And was that also in Gladstone as well?
In Gladstone too. Yep.
Well, that's lucky you had both the placements in Gladstone.
Yeah. Very. Yep.
Yeah. So, what areas of social work do you work in now?
So I'm an accredited mental health social worker. I am in private practice, so I'm work for myself, and I have built a private practice over the last 18 months now. That's been very challenging, but very rewarding. Lots of learning, and I
Yeah.
focus predominantly on mental health.
Yeah. What's the name of your business? We'll advertise it on the website.
Oh, so I've actually just rebranded. It's now Yaleela Torrens Social Worker.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. So I rebranded because I wanted to really build my, I guess, my professional identity across my community. And because Yaleela is a local Aboriginal name, so it means butterfly, and it's from this community. So I really wanted to make a statement around, I am from this community,
Yeah.
and building trust, is important, especially when we're delivering care.
Yeah. So, the clients that you work with, are they Aboriginal clients or non-Indigenous clients or a mixture of both?
They're a complete mixture of both. Yeah. And
Ages?
yeah, so I work across the lifespan. I think my oldest client's 83 and my youngest client's 3.
Yeah,
So
wow.
yeah, very, very diverse presentation. I do have my kind of my niche. I do love working with parents and children.
Yeah.
I find that to be very rewarding. But also, yeah, I will have a diverse array of clients, and that's important to make sure that we're not being stagnant and just having a one type of client come to our practice.
Yeah. Is there any particular disorders or illnesses that you're seeing more commonly presented?
Yeah. Look, the market with the NDIS is very present, obviously. So a lot of our neurodivergent clients are coming through that say if you've got a young person who has, autism level 2 or level 3, they may also, or it's highly likely they've got these very strong presentations of anxiety, rigid thinking, or they've got fear around being in social spaces or fitting in and things like that. So anxiety, complex trauma. What else? We've got, yeah, an array of presentations that come through.
Yeah. Now it's really hard for social work, and I
Mm.
know that social work students will be watching these videos as well. They what the question I'm asking is that how does social work, or where is social work positioned in the
Mm.
industry, and where would you like to see social work positioned in the future?
We're a growing profession, right? AJ, because, and I say this with as much love, because we are still trying to be supported by the AASW for registration, right? We're not yet registered. We're not a protected body, or anyone can call themselves a social worker, essentially. Okay, we even without a degree. That's just how the things are at the moment. So, where we are positioned as allied health professionals, right? We're still recognised as such. So, if you look in the service guide for the NDIS, you'll see social work there. So we actually can provide supports, and we're recognised as such. And we're also through the Better Access initiative, our Medicare system, they recognise us, as well as being able to provide focused psychological supports. But in terms of situationally, I think we're definitely still growing. And the ASW have done a lot of work too around credentials. So I'm not sure what your registration is as a social worker. But there's I think you've got domestic and family violence social workers, you've got clinical social workers, you've got generalist social workers. So there's a big array now of social workers that work within different fields of practice.
Yeah. I think there's also an aged care, disability, and
Yeah.
a school
That's it. See?
as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
For a lot of people that want to get into mental health social work, what's
Yeah.
the process involved in becoming a mental health accredited social worker?
Yeah. Cool. So you need your you need your social work degree. Yep. Once you've got your professional qualifying degree, you need to work in a mental health social worker role for a minimum of 2 years full time. So you've got really good, strong clinical background and clinical experience. Once you've got that, you can then apply for your mental health accreditation through the AASW. Now, in saying that, you do need all your supervision evidence, you need your work history evidence, you need to be able to write to the practice standards. So it's a lengthy process, but it is really achievable if you've got a keen interest in mental health.
Yep. How long did the process take for you personally?
I reckon about 4 to 6 months took me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been on a couple of social work forums where people have said it's taken between 3 to 6 months.
Mm.
A couple of people have taken a little bit longer than that.
Mm.
I think when I did mine a number of years ago,
Mm.
I was probably about as long as you did, about 12 weeks, I reckon, 12 to 16 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I must admit, initially it looked daunting when they handed over all the criteria, and I was like, shh.
There's like 18 practice standards you've got to respond to now.
Yeah.
You've got to write to, the theory of it, and then also an example of how you've used that practice standard. So they're really, you've really got to prove your competency in it. And I would, really encourage if social work students or social workers at the moment are interested in their mental health accreditation, absolutely go for it. But also, be willing to actually have that demonstration of how you've done that work. Or if not, start to get your professional development and get your training and experience now. So that 6 or 12 months down the track, you're ready to apply and you can speak to those practice standards.
Yeah. Thanks. You mentioned working at one of the universities.
Yeah, CQU. Yeah, so I've done a bit of teaching. Done a bit of teaching at CQU. I've done tutoring. I think maybe we've all done a bit of tutoring here and there. And at CQU, the Bachelor of Social Work program, actually, they contracted me for a term to rewrite one of the units and make it more culturally appropriate and responsive for social work students. So that was amazing. That was a really great piece of work. And that unit was called Reconciliation in the Workplace and Community. So we were talking about and teaching, undergrad social work students about reconciliation, and also in the context of social work and what that looked like, especially given the history of social work in our mob.
Yeah. Well, that leads me on to my next question, which was, one of the words that go around quite a lot is reconciliation.
Yep.
What does reconciliation mean to you?
Oh, reconciliation means to me that we are able to have a dual understanding around the real history and the real um, atrocities that occurred in our country. And I really do believe in those five pillars of reconciliation. And reconciliation is about acknowledging the role that non-Indigenous Australia plays in contributing to a reconciled Australia.
Yeah. Do you think social workers and other allied health professionals are culturally safe in the work they do? Or do you think there still needs to be more work definitely in?
Yeah, absolutely. Because AJ, we're working on Western systems, right? Predominantly medical system, biomedical systems, Western ways of knowing, being, and doing, not First Nations ways of knowing, being, doing, right?
Yeah.
So in that, and a lot of the work that I do, especially in terms of when I'm working with our mob, I'm always promoting our ways of knowing and being, doing, and I say our ways are just as sophisticated, and we know what's best for us too. It doesn't fit clinical frameworks, but there's a growing and there's a strong evidence base, that there's literature and there's a lot of research and there's a lot of academics doing the work in our communities to demonstrate that, especially in child protection. So
Yeah.
we're getting a lot of legislative change, which is really exciting for our mob.
What makes you feel culturally safe as an Aboriginal woman going to a service?
Oh, this is such a good question because I've mostly in my work experience, it's been so unsafe.
Yeah.
So unsafe, right? Because the microaggressions especially are so real, you know. At different times I've felt surveillance, like you're being watched, or that my knowledge is or my competency is not up to par to my peers. I've experienced that a lot. I've been in some really traumatic experiences with non-Indigenous workers as well. What makes me feel safe then is having other Aboriginal people in my space, knowing that they're there, right? It just changes the dynamic and it changes the energy because then you're not as a minority. In all my workspaces, I've always been in a minority. You're always the one or the two, black fellas in that whole organization sometimes, and it's daunting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So having other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people there, having decision makers that are black, our mob at decision making levels where, what's important to me is knowing that there's, mob on the board,
Yeah.
or there's people in decision making or power, that have power. That makes me feel really safe.
Yeah. One of the other words that gets thrown around quite recently is truth telling.
Yeah.
What does truth telling mean to you?
Truth telling means to me, again, I think this is back to definitely a part of reconciliation. It's around, again, acknowledgement of history and acknowledgement of what reparations need to occur continuously and ongoingly for our mob.
Do you think Australia's ready for truth telling?
I think we're still in a state of denial. I think we're so the wound is still so raw, AJ. And there's just this high level of denial, and that we experience the violence of that denial. We do. Not ready to accept it yet.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel sometimes like after doing a truth-telling session on a topic that I try, well, a couple of times I've ended up apologizing for upsetting people, and I'm going,
yeah, they're so fragile. The fragility is real. And then all of a sudden we're being, the tears are weaponized. It's wild.
Yeah, the white fragility, the white anxiety that we're still seeing.
It's real. Oh, and I loved your article too. Thanks. That was dedicated. Yeah, it's real. It is real. It's a real thing. That's our ways of knowing. We know that this is real.
Yeah. Do you think that the curriculum of social work is changing. I know you're writing, you wrote a unit in one course, but do you think across Australia social work is embracing this huge change in making sure that ways of knowing are actually incorporated into the profession?
Not enough. Nah, no. I think
I
ways
agree
of
with you.
knowing, ways of knowing. Yeah, we want to read the theories of, if we're in a post-colonial state or if we're post-structural, ways of engaging in social work practice, but doing and being, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
Mm.
Some people think it's dead and gone,
Yeah.
and we should get over this stuff, and it happened years ago. But I always have to remind people, and I know you'd be doing the same thing, that we're not talking about hundreds of years ago for a lot of our issues. A lot of our stuff's right now. More
But it's
kids in
still occurring, and it's still occurring every day. Yeah. Yeah, the racism is still occurring every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I often joke, but I was at a workshop recently, and I don't mind putting this on camera, where I was doing a workshop and we talked a bit about racism, and one of the participants in my group said, AJ, this is 2024. There is no racism and discrimination in Australia. You know it's against the law, don't you? And that was the statement. And everyone just kind of stopped and glared, going, have you ever experienced racism? She says, no, why would I? And she wouldn't, because she's not a minority group. She's not a person of color. She's not in a vulnerable position anywhere. And it was really hard as a presenter, where do I take this conversation to? But the person sitting next to her grabbed her hand and said, oh, Dal, during the break, can I just go dancing in the poppy fields in your head for at least 20 minutes?
Oh my gosh, wouldn't that? The privilege, the privilege.
Yeah. And it wasn't until the end of the workshop that she actually went, AJ, I'm so sorry. I've missed so much. You've
But
just
that's,
explained
yeah.
to me how recent this stuff is. I was thinking it was years ago, and I wouldn't have thought some of the stuff that I would have said and done would have been offensive. But now she heard it and she was willing to listen to it. So some people are willing to hear,
Mm.
but we've still got a big population out there that don't want to hear.
No, no.
Yeah. And I
Makes them
think that,
uncomfortable. Makes
yeah.
them very uncomfortable.
And I think social media is a really bad place where
Mm.
racism
Oh,
still
yeah. Raise its head constantly. It's free. Yeah, yeah.
on any issue that's Indigenous specific.
Completely.
Like,
You can see it. The trolling is horrific.
yeah. So do you where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years' time?
Yeah. Look, I would like to be doing research. I really am drawn to research. I know the power of research. I know that there's a need for our knowing, right? That
Yeah.
that what we know in our communities, what's good for us, it needs to be in our institutions, and it needs to be on par and recognized and acknowledged as knowledge systems that then we can use to better build our communities, build our organizations, build our support services. Yeah. And I love supervision. I love supervising and being there for other Aboriginal social workers that just, you can't speak. I've had a lot of supervisors over time, and I don't think I've ever had Aboriginal. I've got one actually, Tracy Lynch. She's not a social worker, but she's in Newcastle, but can speak to how we show up and what we experience from an Aboriginal perspective, being in predominantly white spaces all the time.
Yeah. If a young Aboriginal person said to you, I want to tell me why I would want to do social work, what would you say to them?
Do you want a better quality of life?
Yeah.
Do you want to lift, do you want to make sure that our mob collectively or even individually as a social worker, you're constantly trying to improve the quality of life for somebody. Yeah, because someone's coming to help. They're not in the greatest state, or they're not in the best position in their life at that journey. And I always come back, do you want a better life? Like, do you want better than this? Yeah.
I actually really like that. I
Mm.
really like that. It's quite positive and makes it, you put it back onto them a little bit to actually go, so you'll learn this knowledge, but then what would you do with it? How
Yeah.
would you actually bring it back to you
We're,
and your
we're all,
family?
yeah, we're liberating, right? We're agents of change. We're trying to and specifically our Black communities, we're liberating each other.
Yeah. When you told your family you wanted to be a social worker, what was their response?
I didn't look, to be honest, I didn't really tell anyone. I just made the decision myself.
Okay.
But they didn't, when I said, oh, I'm studying my Masters of Social Work, it was kind of like, oh, okay, that's good. I don't think they realized the power in the social work profession. But also I think just negative experiences of social workers too, judgmental, trying to tell us what to do, fixing us, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. And we still see that sometimes. Like I see workers sometimes that come to come to my trainings or talk to me, and it is like I really want to help you people, and I really want to
Mm,
lift you up, and I want to speak on your behalf, and it's going. I think what you're trying to say is that you want to work with us,
mm,
and you want to create us platforms for
mm.
us to share our stories and not have you always talk for us.
Yes. Yeah.
But there's still this the narrative still hasn't got around yet
Still the same.
in the words. Yeah. I'm just watching the time, but I would like to just ask you one final question, and that is, what would you like listeners to walk away with from our yarn this afternoon?
Yeah. Look, always believe in our First Nations ways of knowing, being, and doing, right? That they are really knowledgeable systems, knowledgeable ways, and that always strive to make our spaces safe for our mob, especially our Black social workers. Look out for each other to take care of each other.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. I want to just say to everyone, thank you for Yaleela for joining us today. It was a pleasure talking to you. I know the viewers are going to love talking to you, and you must come back for another second session for a follow up later on. But guys, thanks for joining us, and I'll see you at the next podcast. Thanks heaps.
Thanks, AJ.